the time of enslavement, darkness, and violence, they risked their young lives. On their shoulders, they were carrying Poland.
Nazywam się Wanda Thun. Urodziłam się 21 listopada.
My name is Wanda Thun. I was born on November the 21st, 1924, in the village of Mrowla. My father, Julian Pienkowski, had an estate there. We came from a Polish petty noble family. We were raised in the spirit of patriotism. The reason? Our parents lived in the age of the partitions. They remembered what it was like to be enslaved. So when Poland eventually regained its independence, all of us felt such wonderful joy. Finally, we were able to settle and start living our own lives. That is why our patriotism and love of the country had always been so important to us. Before the war, I had been in the Scouts. They constantly stressed the importance of nurturing our Polish identity.
Kładziony nacisk właśnie na pielęgnowanie polskości. A w 40 roku mama mnie wywiozła do Warszawy.
In 1940, my mother brought me to Warsaw because the Germans were taking young people away to Germany for forced labor. I didn't want to waste my time, so I started to attend nursing school. There's one day I can't forget. My friend and I were on our way to school. It was just before 8 in the morning when suddenly we saw a terrible pool of blood spread on the pavement. Some people were trying to cover it with sand. It was a deeply shocking experience for us because we knew that they typically executed people very early in the morning. There were a lot of places in Warsaw where that happened.
Tym się do ruchu oporu wstąpiłam od razu, jak przyjechałam do Warszawy, mając lat 16.
Of course, I joined the resistance as soon as I came to Warsaw. I was 16 years old. What was it like? It started with underground history lessons, or the Chopin concerts, which were obviously illegal, or patriotic recitations. There were a lot of young people in the resistance, just like us, so we also carried out some minor sabotage operations. For example, we would paint the anchor symbol on the walls. Sometimes we did audacious things, like putting up those symbols in the German parts of the city. Here's how it worked. 2 of us were on the watch, and the third one would do the painting. If the Germans had seen us, they would have killed us on the spot. It took a lot of nerve to do that. I remember that it was the only entertainment we had. When we were 17, little sabotage was excellent entertainment. And then the uprising was looming in the air.
I tak dotrwałam do powstania. Najpierw nas zmobilizowano 28 lipca.
First, we were called up on July the 28th, but the very next day we received an order to go back home. And then finally, on August the 1st, a liaison officer showed up at noon and told us to check in at the medical post. We were waiting there for 3 hours. There were 6 of us, all girls. At 3 o'clock, someone gave the order to move the medical point. We were told to set up our new post on Stępińska Street, in the back of the Łazienki Park. We had barely unpacked our equipment when the uprising started for good. We heard gunfire and saw someone fall on the street, so we couldn't wait any longer. We put on our armbands, grabbed the stretcher, and went out to do our job. And all of a sudden, we were under heavy fire. The wounded man on our stretcher was shot right away. I remember running down somewhere. There was even a roof over my head. And suddenly, a hand grenade came out of nowhere and landed in my friend's lap. There were those 2 boys with us. One of them grabbed the grenade and quickly got rid of it, just in time. Then another grenade was tossed at us, so again this boy picked it up and threw it away. And then all we could hear was constant shelling all around us. Those 2 boys got up and started to run. One of them was immediately shot, but the other one managed to escape. Meanwhile, I saw my friend running up to that wounded boy, but she also got shot in both hands. Now the Germans were so close to us that we could hear their voices, so another friend of mine ran out of our shelter, waving a white handkerchief to show them we wanted to surrender. But the Germans shot the girl right in the collarbone. She collapsed and they just yelled, "Raus!" We didn't have a clue where our unit was. What's more, it turned out that the Germans were stationed in the back of the Łazienki Park, just where we were. However, they had no idea what was happening in Warsaw because they had just been back from the front line. They didn't know what was going on at all. We asked them what to do with our wounded friends lying out there. The Germans responded that an ambulance would pick them up. And fortunately, that's what really happened. They were taken to the Wolski hospital and managed to survive. The next morning, the Germans told us we were free to go home. One of them was a Silesian and spoke in the vernacular. Then he explicitly ordered his fellows not to shoot us. And indeed, as we were walking down the square, no one fired a gun at us. So luckily we could leave. Soon the bullets were flying over our heads again. We started to move north to get closer to Puławska Street. We wanted to get to some medical point to start doing something useful. The local people warned us that we wouldn't be able to move around during the day because of the shelling. They told us to wait until nightfall because then we could run between the series of luminous gunshots. And that's what we did.
Jedną serią a drugą. No i tak było. Potem nam powiedziały te dziewczyny, mówią, idźcie do dowództwa po przydział.
Later on, some girls told us to go and see the commander about our assignment. I was sent to the medical point on Lenartowicza Street. I don't know where they sent the other girl that was with me. I lost touch with her. Anyway, I was working at Lenartowicza even after the uprising ended. The medical points were set up to help people who were injured fighting in the front line. However, there were fewer and fewer beds available at our hospital because the Germans kept throwing bombs at us. Yet, there were more and more injured patients who needed medical help. I was working in that place by the end of September, until September the 24th, to be exact. That's when the Mokotów district fell. First, there was shelling. The Germans fired from different weapons. They even used Nebelwerfer. These were 12 rocket artillery guns loaded with incendiary ammunition. We called them roaring cows because of the horrible sound they made when the Germans fired the launchers. That's why we called them cows. When we heard that sound, we would all freeze and wait. What target would they hit? Wherever the rockets were flying, they set everything on fire. Leaves would fall from the trees. Even stones would burn. Our medical point was in a small villa. We were terrified because if one of the rockets hit our building, it would be over. That's why we decided to move the wounded to a boiler house on Puławska Street. And then the bombs started to fall from the sky and they hit our street. The house nearby collapsed because a bomb fell on it. So we moved our patients back to the villa and they stayed there until the end. And then the full-scale offensive began. The Germans fired every possible weapon. Anyone who could walk or limp started to retreat. There were those trenches dug along the roads, and they were the only way we could move around. Our patients who were able to move started to pull back. Those too sick to move had no choice but to stay. So my friend and I decided to stay with them. 3 of them. If anyone asked, we repeated the same story, that we were civilians who had been accidentally shot. And then one day some Silesian man came up to us and ordered us to go home. We asked how we could possibly go and leave the wounded. He claimed they would be transported somewhere safe. Again, they told us to leave. And then, after we did, we heard the gunshots. Our boys were killed in their beds. 5 people were shot. To this very day, I can't forgive myself that I left them there, that we didn't stand up to those Germans. Yet they were of the worst kind, the SS. I don't know. We lived in such terror that oftentimes we simply didn't know what to do.
Trzeba było jakoś zaoponować. Nie wiem, człowiek był tak zastraszony wtedy, że nie wiadomo było już co robić. I następnego dnia
The next day we were going to be escorted to Pruszków. On the way, we saw the Soviet planes in the sky, and soon our German guards started to flee in panic. Then we saw some women coming back from the field, carrying potatoes. My friend and I joined them. That's how we escaped from the German transport. But that wasn't the end. When we walked all the way up to Grodzisk Street, there were German guards again blocking the way, and we didn't have any documents on us. Nothing at all. And then we were lucky again. We saw some children. They were pulling a cart loaded with potatoes. So we kept walking with those children, and somehow we were allowed to pass. I went to Grodzisk because some of my friends lived there. I didn't know where my family was because the rest of my relatives remained in the Warsaw city center. It was in November that we were finally able to find each other, one by one, usually by chance. We stayed there until the Red Army marched in.
Szliśmy tam do wejścia Armii Czerwonej. No ojczyzna, no to w czym ja żyję w ogóle, wszystko co mnie otacza.
So, my homeland. It's where I live. It's everything around me. It's so important to work for the good of your country. I can't imagine living anywhere else in the world. I've been attached to Poland since I was a little child. My family has been very patriotic and religious. All of this, it's been somehow connected to each other. We work hard for the good of our country, and everything we do is just to make it a better place.
Young, free, idealistic. Thanks to them, we live in Poland, in a free Poland, out of gratitude for Poland. Subsidized by the Polish National Foundation.